Dr. Umar supports Black Hebrew Israelites after the Iran strike. As you know, for the last week or so, there has been an intense ratcheting up of violence in the Middle East. Specifically, we have seen Israel strike the northeast part of Tehran, Iran, which has caused a reaction from the Iranian military and the Iranian government more broadly. And we're starting to see what is a very dangerous situation ratchet up. In the midst of that, Dr. Umar Johnson, Ifatunde, Prince of Pan-Africanism, put this note on his stories, which I thought was interesting. He said, "I pray for the safety of our African Hebrew Israelite family during this Arab-Israeli conflict. May the Most High keep them protected." That's what Umar said. And there were people who were not happy about that. There were people who were outraged by his comments. I think that many of the people who were outraged by Umar's comments misunderstood what he was saying and or willfully misrepresented what he was saying. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit, break it down just a little bit, and give some context. First, Umar is calling for the safety of African Hebrew Israelites during this conflict. Many people thought mistakenly that he was talking about the Ethiopians, also known as the Beta Israel. The Beta Israel are the Ethiopians who were mostly, not all, but mostly brought to Israel in the mid-1980s under Operation Moses and Solomon a little bit. And these people came through more or less what was Aliyah. They made the same religious migration, they exercised the same right of return that has been part of Israeli law since 1951. And they are Israeli citizens. They are fully entrenched in Israeli society, and they are they're Israelis. They're Israeli Jews. Jewish is their nationality or their national identity on their Israeli citizenship card. You know, there's nationality and their citizenship. Their nationality is Jewish, just like everybody else who is an Israeli citizen who identifies as Jewish, as opposed to the Druze or the Arabs. Anyway, all that to say, by the way, the right of return was July 1950, not 1951. Forgive me. And so the Ethiopians are occupiers. They're purveyors of violence to the Palestinian people. The Ethiopians they're Israeli settlers, just like everybody else. That's not who Umar was talking about. He didn't say he was talking about them. The people who are criticizing him for supporting the Ethiopians are simply, it just shows how little they know. The great John Henry Clark said, the more you talk, the more you show what you haven't read, right? The people who are challenging Umar for that, for supporting Ethiopian Israelis, they're just wrong. He did not say that. He said African Hebrew Israelites. The African Hebrew Israelites are an entirely different community. They live in the Negev or the Naqab. They live in mostly in Dimona, or they're based in Dimona. Many of them live everywhere now. But when Ben Ami Ben Israel started a movement in Chicago that eventually moved to Liberia, that eventually moved to modern day Israel. And they came there, but they were not accepted as Jews. They were not accepted as returners. They weren't accepted as citizens. And this group of Black Americans who moved to Chicago and are now multiple generations in Israel, they're fighting for their identity. They're fighting for their safety. They're fighting for their right to exist in Israel. Many have been deported or gotten deportation notices in the last 6 to 9 months. You can look right here on the channel and see the conversation. It's a different group of people. Now, I have spent time in Israel with the African Hebrew Israelites. I've stayed in the home that they provide for visitors. I've stayed in other places there. I've done research on them. I have a whole documentary that deals with them in great detail, and it tells their whole history. So I have, the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, which is their full name, the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, who happen to live in Dimona, they are a different group of people. That is not who Umar is talking about. I see Van Lathan say, I'm going to have to ask you to back up. I will, brother. And if you want, you can come on. If you want to ask some direct questions, you can jump on now. No pressure, but if you want to, shoot me a text and I'll shoot you the link. But it's important to understand this, and we'll talk about all of this. The African Hebrew Israelites of Dimona have been fighting for citizenship in Israel. One could argue that they are colonizers too. One could argue that they are settlers too. And while they are being mistreated, and they're certainly being mistreated on the grounds of race, and among other things, and that white supremacy is governing this, I agree with all of that. I think someone could argue, and they have argued, that the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem are no better than anybody else. There's an argument against that. They don't have the same power as the rest of the Israeli citizenry, including the Ethiopians, and they don't have the same goals and vision. There's an argument for that as well. But I think in defense of Dr. Umar, I think it's important to understand that Umar is a Pan-Africanist. And what he's saying is that Africans anywhere deserve our support and solidarity. Not Africans anywhere deserve our support and solidarity no matter what they say. He's not going to support something unethical. He's not going to support something unprincipled just because they're African. Africans can be criticized and challenged too. That's why he'd be talking about that coon chip. And he ain't wrong. He's 100% right. But there is something to be said about a Pan-African saying, hey, I'm supporting the existence of African people everywhere. And I think that's why he's supporting the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem. And to be clear, the AHIJ, the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, they do support Africa. There are other Israelite groups, and we talked to Captain Tazariak right here on the channel, who talks about Africa in a different way. He has a different posture on Africa than the AHIJ, who affirm Africa, who love Africa, and who see themselves as part of the African diaspora. And in fact, they see themselves as sitting. They see Israel as Northeast Africa. They frame Africa as, Israel, as Northeast Africa. They say it sits on the African tectonic plate. They're looking at even Israel through the lens of Africanity. That's different, and I could see why Umar would support them. And look, I have a level of admiration for the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem. I spend time with them. I know them. Again, I talk to them. I check in on them. I get it. At the end of the day, I still think that they are colonizers of the Palestinian people. And so I don't support their end goal or end game, but I share Umar's prayer for their safety. I do. And that's the Pan-Africanist in me as well. Umar himself, though, offered an analysis or a response to people who thought that he should be more pro-Palestinian. And that was said to him in direct response to this critique, this ostensible critique of him. And here's what I'm trying to find the actual. I have it here, but I want to see if there's a clear I'll pull up on my phone and just read it. I was trying to find a way to share with y'all, but I don't know how to do all that fancy stuff. I'm an old black man now, so y'all just going to deal with my way of reading it. Let me pull up this this thing from Umar. So I want you to hear in his own words how he talks about this. But again, I think much of the outrage or the criticism of Umar was unfair, because I think it was colored by an unfair reading and really uninformed reading of Umar's statement. In other words, y'all didn't know what he was saying, and instead of looking up what he was saying, y'all judged him. And that seems to be problematic. It was very reactionary. Now, again, there are people who think that the Hebrew Israelites who live in Jerusalem don't deserve our support and praise. And again, that's a different conversation. But at least let's have an informed one. I have my own thought on that that I'm happy to have. We can have that conversation too. I gotta be looking. I'm just sitting there looking at. I'm wondering why it ain't popping. I keep looking up Van Lathan when I should be looking up Dr. Umar. That's me being distracted by Van Lathan's foolishness. He's disrupting the class a little bit. Here we go. So Dr. Umar posted this on his Instagram, so you can check it out. You can check it out for yourself. And also, oh my God, my brother Dash just dropped 50 Canadian bucks. Yo, that's real, man. They definitely. I'll take Canadian bucks over Ian bucks. I'll take anything over. I'll take the Milwaukee bucks, Usher bucks. I don't care. I'll take any of them over Ian bucks. Them shit is worthless. Dash, I appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum. I appreciate you, Ahi. I appreciate the work you're doing, and I appreciate what y'all doing over on the JBTV side. And thank you for this generous donation, even in Canadian money. Let me read Umar's response. I think this is important. I think it's super important to read what Umar again actually said. I always want to represent people properly. Someone he reposted a text someone sent him that said, "I thought you would have the sense to be pro-Palestinian." He said, "Good Garvey Day, my beautiful. Reading comprehension disabled." That's kind of funny. Good Garvey Day, my beautiful reading comprehension disabled and politically uninformed Black queen. I don't support anyone except African people, as I am too busy focused on African liberation and redemption to be worried about other people's problems. Now, this is where it gets interesting when you think about the Hebrew Israelites as part of African liberation. I simply offered support to and will continue to stand in solidarity with my African Hebrew Israelite brothers, sisters, elders, and children who reside in Dimona, Israel, which is what I told y'all. I said he's talking about Dimona. They are members of the Black race, and I am concerned about their safety amidst this war that is brewing between the pale man and the Arabs. I offer the same concern for the indigenous Africans of the Middle Eastern states who are similarly caught up in a crisis they have nothing to do with. I pray for the protection of them. If this means that I support Zionism and white supremacy, then you clearly have much more to learn. I agree with most of what Brother Umar said, and I think that he's right to make some distinctions here. Where I probably see it a little differently is that the African Hebrew Israelites of Dimona, their children are in the Israeli army now. This isn't like 20 years ago. After the show of strength, which is a big moment where the community, what we call the Kufar, where the Kufar stood up to the Israeli prime minister and to the Israeli military. After that, things started getting good. You know, the prime ministers several prime ministers, including Netanyahu of Israel, have shown up to the Kufar. They've shown up to the Israelite community. They're seen as like a flower in the desert now. They're seen as this beautiful, amazing community. And because of that, they're getting a lot of the benefits of Israeli citizenship. What happened was they got permanent residency, many of them, and then their children joined the Israeli military. When you join the Israeli military, you get citizenship. Not only do you get citizenship, but your parents can get citizenship. Because once you're a citizen, you can get your parents' citizenship. What's my point? My point is they literally traded their children for membership into the Israeli society. And so while I have deep love for many people in the African Hebrew Israelite community of Jerusalem and Dimona, and I support their Pan-African and Pan-Africanist vision, in many ways, they are bound up in Zionism. And even if you look at their older stuff where they were disagreeing with the Israeli state, they were still arguing for Zionism. They just wanted to be the stewards of the Zionism, which gets tricky when you start using the Bible as the argument for it. And so I totally get what he's saying. Obviously, Dr. Umar doesn't support Zionism. He doesn't support white supremacy. He's trying to stand in unwavering solidarity with African people around the planet. I struggle with the Africans in Israel, some of them. I mean, there are Eritrean brothers and sisters, Sudanese brothers and sisters who are on the right side of history, who are simply fighting for survival. But just like the Ethiopians, the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, I think, have many of them have been caught up in the settler colonial vision of Israel and of Zionism rather than the liberatory one of African people. So I think it creates a tension that we should talk about. And again, that's not a criticism of Umar at all. It's an invitation for all of us to think really in real robust ways about identity and power and how these things are tied up. Anyway, I just thought it was a cool conversation. And there's nothing I like more than talking about race in the Middle East as a scholarly nerd. So, and I'm working on books on all of it, the Afro-Palestinians. At some point I'll be writing books on the Hebrew Israelites. And of course, if you want to read a great book on the African Hebrew Israelites of Dimona, you should read Thin Description by John Jackson. And there's others. There's another great one called, it's on my shelf here. I'll tell you in a second. It's by an Israeli scholar, a very Markowitz is the last name. But Markowitz has a book on the Hebrew Israelites as well. So we'll get to it. I'll tell you all about that later. But there's a lot of interesting work, and y'all should read on the Ethiopians, the Beta Israel, who some of y'all mistakenly or racistly call the Falashin or the Falashin. But we'll talk about that another time. Other questions before we go? Henry Jackson said, am I misunderstanding that was a conditional agreement that the children had to enter? It's an interesting question. What I have been told directly by the Israelites is that they wanted their children in the military. Not that they had to, not that it was a quid pro quo, but that they wanted their children in the military. I think there's some distinction without a difference, some shading of meaning here. At the end of the day, I don't think they get as far or get where they got without their kids joining the Israeli occupation forces. Mo reset, it's not Pan-Africanism to want to live in the Middle East. Let's talk about that. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So I don't actually have an answer to that because I really don't know what you mean.